Hello there, I'm Angela and welcome to my arty little corner of the internet. I hope you're all doing fine and well and that you're enjoying my videos if you've watched others of them. If you're new here, you are most welcome and I do hope you enjoy what you see. It seems that there's plenty of people enjoying my Draw With Me videos, so that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And I've seen somebody on Instagram, what's her name? Do you know what? I can't remember. Valerie, I think, has really drawn along with me and has posted what she's created, and it's really lovely. So that's really nice to see, is to see people doing that. But what I would do is to encourage people to use that as a starting point to go on and develop their own way of drawing and styles as well, because that's part of the fun of it as well. With that in mind, look at this. This is an A4 page in a sketchbook and it's full of seed pods. I cutched up last night underneath my lovely electric blanket yesterday evening after everything had been done yesterday, and I spent some time drawing. These were the only two, these ornate ones here were the only two that were there. But let me just move this out the way a moment so I can turn this over, because yesterday in the template I was drawing, I said, oh, those leaves would look like I'd turn them into trees. Christmas trees, I said, but trees. Well, I've got trees and leaves aplenty here. So I'm not going to draw on this page because, you know, drawing on A4 is, I'm discovering, is actually brilliant for things like this. But on the camera, A5 is a perfect size. So I am going to keep that out. I am going to pop it somewhere so I can see it. That involves me moving my keyboard 2 ticks. Pop that over there because I don't need it. And I'll pop that underneath my screen so I can see what I'm doing. With these, and I hope you're going to enjoy this, because I surprised myself here. I have made some kinds of errors on the ones I've drawn, but I think that we might enjoy this. And I think I'm going to put quite a simple edge on the bottom because I want some ground for things to grow out of. And leaves, individual leaves, look a lot like trees. In fact, if you look at the shape of a tree without its leaves on and the leaf, they often are very similar, or even with the leaves. Depends. Sometimes you need them without the leaves on to see the shape, but they are very similar. And then I think I'm just going to make this a bit more interesting by just creating some shapes like this, which will lead to opportunities for patterns and textures, perhaps. I've made a bit of a mess here, but that was me trying to separate a big loop into smaller ones without thinking. So there we are. That'll do nicely. So there we are. Yeah, it looks like a river. I've just realised that. Okay, so let me start with one of these. I started with as tall as I want the tree to be, and the very first one I did put a circle at the top, and then I drew the trunk of the tree in. Not quite like this because I'm redrawing this now, but so tree trunks tend to start, you know, they start thin at the top and they get thicker towards the bottom. So that's just what I've done here. Then I used my pencil. So I wanted, you know, sort of like the classic fir tree kind of shape going out. Yes, I've gone outside of the margins. These are only a guide for me. So and I didn't do this with my sample, but I think I've got the perfect opportunity here to do this, or to try it, because what's the worst that will happen? I'll just put that in very lightly. Then I drew pencil lines across from one side to the other so that I would get some kind of lines going on. Now, hang on, I've got an 05 I could really do with a smaller pen. 2 ticks while I go and find one. Hopefully that'll be quick. 08 is bigger. 01 is smaller than I want. That 05 is smaller. 01. I've got an 02. Oh, an 02 will do then. Okay. So I'm going to put circles at every intersection of line. Just some nice small ones. But actually big ones would be quite nice because if you're into such things, because I am aware that perhaps not everybody celebrates Christmas. If you made them big, they could actually act as baubles, I suppose. Okay, I'm going to put one here, one there, one there. But for now, I'm going to leave. No, I am going to put one at the corner because I thought, oh, that can make an interesting shape or edge there. But I'm thinking, no, let's not try. I'll try that in my sketchbook. And if it works successfully, I'll share it with you another time. So I've basically got this net. I could, I suppose, if I wanted to, draw another line here to separate those big boxes up, but I'm not going to. Okay. Now, if I wanted this to look a bit more like a fir tree, I could have these going up or going down because I'm going to be making, if I bring my sketchbook over, I'm going to be using this idea of drawing an S shape or backwards S shape. I do it backwards. Oh, look at that, and we can go full. Ooh, there we go. That's another variation on a theme. But that idea of drawing 2 dots together with an S shape. She says, just saying, oh, you should go that way. Suddenly I go the opposite way. Oh, I will definitely try this one out with you now. So it's that kind of idea. Is it well? No, it's not well, is it? I don't know what this, I can't remember what tangle pattern this is. Okay, so I'm going to start by connecting these dots vertically because they will all be connected the same way, and I can make decisions about what I do to connect these to the stem. Of course, an alternative is, and I'll do this on the other side, is I could put semicircles along the stem as anchor points for how you join the boxes together. But on this side, I'm not going to. And the very last one I take right the way up, and it just joins that stem somewhere towards the top of the ball on the top. I like the big one at the top because it's an opportunity to let things join there and not be too worried about precision. And I'm going to do the same shape with these ones. So I'll do it quite quickly because I am used to working quite quickly. I think I'd have been all right with a thicker pen. I'm not a fan of these fine pens, it has to be said. Okay, now then I'm going to join these along the bottom. So these are going to go this way, all the same kind of line. I think it's exactly the same shape that I drew to join them vertically. And then the same here. Now I've got options. I could go across and join them where that is, or I could go down and join them halfway down, which is what I'm going to do. Halfway down between these lines, because I think that gives a bigger feeling of the tree being curved. Show you what I mean, because on the other side, and because these go down, they don't connect up to the top. So that gives a feeling that we've got a ridge here and another ridge there. So I quite like that. And shadow would help to bring that out greatly. I'd use darker colours here, or darker shadow here, and lighter, you know, a highlight along here, because it feels like it's beginning to curl back over. So where these curls are is where I'd put highlights. So let's have a look at the other side. Now, on this side, I went from the right to the left. On this side, I'm going to go from the left to the right. So I'm going to mirror, reflect the shape, because that's how it would kind of work in nature, isn't it? Possibly. But then nature isn't perfect in everything that it does. It's the imperfections in symmetry and things that make things so beautiful and fascinating. So there we are. So here now, I've got these. So again, it's that if I look, we need to start here and go under. So again, it's the top on the right to the bottom on the left, or the bottom on the left to the top on the right, whichever way you prefer to draw. Me, I just do whatever is comfortable. Okay, and then we'll go up these ones. It would be quite difficult to draw this. Well, you could draw it on a much smaller scale. I'm drawing it nice and big because then I've got opportunities to add shapes in there. The different sides, and I've done this deliberately, sketchbook, remember, is I can see the difference that having the dots here and joining them horizontal makes to those that have that slant. And it's almost like I would want to curve these even more to get a slant, more of a slant going with these ones as well, which would be quite fun. But it's a start, isn't it? Okay, we need patterns for the trunk. Now I could just draw lines up, but I quite like doing this for tree trunks. So using just semicircular shapes, and here I won't have it joining. I'm just going to make these V shapes at the bottom, like so. They just nicely fill in a trunk. I use this quite a lot. It's not the only way I add patterns to tree trunks, because I would have add the other ones I'd have added before I inked, put the ink lines in, because it will give a lovely textured edge. But I'm going to try and keep it as simple as I can here. And that looks like it. Sorry, I think I was off camera for some of that, or a lot of it. It looks disjointed, but once shadow is added and or colour, then things will be a bit better. Now with these, you can also add extra lines, so that you could aura or double up these lines, which is what I've done. I'm not so sure I like that. I'm not sure. So I'm going to leave it as it is for now. Go back to the thicker pen, and let's have a look at doing this in a different way. Okay, so I will draw a smaller tree here. I'll try and leave enough space so I don't have to work behind them. But let me have a look. There we go. I'm going to take this down. I really am. So at the top this time I'm going to put a little triangular shape, a little rounded cone. I know why the tree trunk stands out. It's because I used a finer pen for the outer bits. And again, I'm going to put a tree trunk in. But I'm going to keep this one pretty much same thickness all the way down, which will work. And again, I'm going to use pencils, pencil liners, guides for the other sections, and I want to make this, well, you can see the kind of shape. So what I'm doing really is I'm putting a grid kind of mat on to get a sense of the curving of the lines. And again, for this one I am going to use this pen, the thick one, just to see the difference it makes. It is perhaps a bit too thick for these. There, those lines joined, so I just put one dot there. We'll make use of it as if okay. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to make these go quite a bit of the way downwards, and I'm going to do the same so it's curling over the top and then coming back down. This pen is just a tad too thick, but it's fine. And then on the other side I'll do exactly the same. So over the top and towards the centre, over the top, down. So these ones are just almost a straight line. These here are the usual shapes, but I'm trying to dip this bottom line down and bring it back up with more of a curve. Does that make sense? I haven't done it on all of them. I haven't managed it on all of them. But as I'm working this, I can see that's what I need to do. Perhaps. Okay, and then the outside ones. Same kind of idea with these shapes. The nice thing is that where this one meets, it will actually meet nicely with that single dot that's there. In fact, part of me thinks I should have done it this side as well, because this one will be a very tiny one. So that's, again, similar, but here I haven't tried to bend these up at the bottom, I've just had them go down. And I think I could have done that with this one. Let's try that. You really are drawing along with me here, you do know that, don't you? This really is sketchbook work. You know what I want to do? Question is, can I execute it? Not kill it. I'm not executing anything, me. Pull it off, I think, would be a better term. So again, this one will go behind, but that's fine. And again, at the top here, I will only put one dot in. The feel of the tree will be different depending on whether you have squares or whether you make them longer and narrower or shorter and wider. No, it's the same thing. You know, whether you have them as rectangles, whether they're tall and thin or short and wide. So we'll put just one there, two here. I really do need to get myself some 03 pens in stock or in my stash. I've got plenty of 05s because those are my stock in trade, I suppose. Not stockings, but 03s I use a lot of as well as 05s. Or 05s are what I use a lot of, but 03s I like for the finer pen. 01s just get too stupidly fine in comparison to an 05. I don't like the huge difference in size. It ends up looking quite clunky like this. Is that a good word? It is now. Okay, so let me try using the O2, because I'm going to start by doing these, and I'm going to make them go down towards, as if I'm going diagonally through the square, though I'm not going to get it exactly diagonally. Do the same on the other side. Yep, I'm on camera. So get them to go towards that bottom corner. It doesn't matter if it hits it or not, but I think that's what I want to do. And then this one will actually go behind the snow. Okay, so I now want to join these, and I'm going to do that with the slightest curve possible from one side to the other. I think too much of a curve with these is not a good thing. Okay, let's have a look. So that would go up and round, isn't it? Yeah, that way. Sometimes it takes me a little while to work this out, and that's no bad thing. I think the problem comes when I twist and turn things around like I'm doing here, is I lose track of which direction things go in. My sense of direction isn't that wonderful. Okay, so how do we join these down next? Well, I'm not going to join them to this dot. I'm going to join them part way down, as if their row of dots is hidden behind. Now that dot doesn't really belong. I've just worked that out. So yeah, so it's kind of trying to do the same kind of shape as here. Here I've made some of them a bit bendy, and that dot again doesn't really belong. But then we can, yeah, that's right, it goes that way. Okay. Oh, that's very tree-like. I'm pleased with that one. By making that decision not to join the side-to-side lines to that dot, but to carry them down, has given a completely different kind of feel to that. Much more tree-like, I suppose. Oh, that's made me happy. That's something for me to work with. Okay, let's have a look. I also did one that was like this, which is again, it's the same kind of thing. I always start with the central stem, and then for this one, again, that dot that side might just disappear elsewhere. I might be able to make use of it in this one. Now I am going to put that grid in, because yeah, we had a grid, and I'm going to use a smaller pen, a finer pen for this. Where these cross, so you can see what I've done with the pencil, where these cross, I'm going to put a diamond in there rather than a circle. They need to be roughly the same size, roughly a square on its points, but it's not really crucial. I'm not going to fit another one in there. And I could pop them on this side, but I'm not going to. I shall pop one, oh, there. I am going to have to pop two in now. That's okay. So let me do this. This was quite a bit of fun to do, as you can see. I'm doing this today earlier. I haven't done any work yet for Adorable Dogs because I woke with a migraine and it took me ages, and I mean ages, to get rid of it, and I had to go back to sleep afterwards. So I thought, right, well, the last of the migraine is lingering before I work with computer screens, which can sometimes just set it all off again. I'll just take some time to share this with you because I said I'd do this yesterday. I said, oh, that'll be fun to play with, and boy wasn't it. And I don't think I've finished. There's other patterns that I think I'd like to explore here. Okay, so what did I do next? I tell you what, I am going to put little half triangles, or half triangles, half diamonds on the edge here, because they'll give me something for lines to connect to. So I'm just giving a gentle bend down at the bottom. I could have done that on the side, had these lines instead of straight, because I've done them quite straight. I could have had them bulging, but I haven't. And then I'm going to do the same between these, just a gentle bend down, nothing much, just very subtle, would work very nicely. It's getting a bit like, what was the tangle pattern I did in Inktober? Oof, is it? Out of focus? Kind of. Now then, this is where I had some fun, because I took this idea of splitting these into triangles up. I think I actually drew the triangles first. That's my problem. I haven't quite got this the same. No, it works. Because what I'm doing is I'm going from the corner that is here, and I'm drawing a line up to, so I'm going from the bottom of this one, bottom left, to the top right of the one in the row below. So I'm not joining point to point, I'm joining side to side, I suppose, but sort of diagonally opposite. It's hard to explain, but I think you can see what I'm doing. So this is exactly what I did, and at the top I'm not even, I could try, but it ends up like that. So I get this kind of triangular netting. Now if I wanted to, we could go the other way as well, but there's something about doing this a little bit, not from the off the points as it were, is, well, I don't know, I think it does just join off the points. I don't know why I'm making a fuss about this. I've lost the plot here. So we get diamond crosses. The one I've got is different to this. It looks different. I think it's because I have these further down, so there's a bigger slope. Yeah. Okay, and one more that I want to do, because this is taking that idea that came from this one. This I thought, oh, that feels like out of focus. Okay, let's go and do this one. So I'm going to do this, a really narrow kind of branch, sort of like shape there, and then I'm just going to draw it a bit like a fancy skirt. And again, just going to put some of these in, but I'm going to leave quite biggish gaps between them. This, I think, is my favourite one of all of them. which is saying something, possibly. And again, I put diamonds at the intersections. And yeah, I've got some going behind, but because I'm doing these in a thicker pen, strictly speaking, if I wanted this to look in the background, this one should have been done in the thin pen, and the previous one I've done here should be in a thicker pen. Not happy with what I've done there, but this is me working live, as it were. I still haven't worked out all of the details of all of this, but that's fine. Okay, so the out of focus thing is where you draw from the side of this one, so this side, and I want it to bulge out so it'll join the top of this one. So the bottom right of this will join the top right here, like so, and you repeat that. And here it's going to go all the way up to the top. Same with these. Bottom right on that one to the top right there, bottom right, and the top right one is down there. Bottom right to the top right there, top right, and it would join back there. And then it's the same, it would be the same with these, except that I haven't got a bottom right. On the other side, it's the top right to the bottom left. So it's the opposite way round. Sorry, it's the bottom left, top left. Oh God, don't know my left from my right. My driving instructor used to get infuriated with me. He used to call my left your other right, Angela. What? I would go. So I've done it again. Nightmare. So we've got this. Now, I'm going to have these bulging downwards. So it's top right to top left. And the bigger the bulge, the better. And that is the purpose of these little ones on the side, is to give somewhere for this to connect to. They're not essential, mind you. I think you could do this without them. But I end up with this lovely puffy. This is where I went wrong, so we'll just do what I can there and there. But I've got this lovely puffy tree. How's that? Yet there are others on my page, but I've most probably done enough of that for now. Just reaching over for an eraser. But I am going to add some shadow here. But before I do that, I do want to erase my pencil lines because they will be smudged with the tortillon. I may have smudged some ink over there actually. Okay, so let me just pick this up a little bit. That'll do, most probably. I always feel like I move off. I need to move everything closer towards me. Okay, I have this. This is my 6B. So this one here, I am going to put shadow all the way along here. It's the graphite mat, and I'm going to do the same on this side, even where those circles are, because I just have a feeling I'd want to put some metallic gold or silver in those, or even green. Okay, so let's have a look. I've got a paper stump here today rather than a tortillon. They just were to hand. To clean these, you can get pieces of sandpaper on a piece of hardboard, or you can just use sandpaper, and you just roll the tip around on it to take layers of paper on. The difference between this and a tortillon is tortillons are made from paper that's been very tightly rolled. I did see a video of somebody showing you how to make your own. I thought, genius, you just need newsprint. Because newspaper is the best to use, you know, or thin paper like that, but newsprint would be the one. So here I'm going to put some shadow here as well, underneath this one. Because we've got a bigger area at the bottom, it will be bigger. I'll do the same this side, following the line here. And I do tend to put this a bit wider. The matte graphites are brilliant, but they don't spread as far as or quite as easily as traditional graphite. But that also makes me happy, because it means it's not so easy for me to fill areas up with graphite unless they're teeny tiny areas. So there's that one. And this. I actually haven't added any shadow to these in my sketchbook. They're just plain line drawings. So there we are. That works quite nicely. And then these are beginning to curl back over on this side, so I think I'm going to want just a bit on these outside edges as well, because they do look like they're beginning to curl back over, and keep this area here for the highlight. Of course, adding colour will really bring these quite nicely to life. I'm also not being very careful or cautious with where I put the graphite, as in keeping everything the same thickness, because I know I'm going to be spreading out. I'm also putting some underneath these lines, as if these are overlapping one another top down, which is what you would actually see in a real evergreen. As the upper branches overlap the lower ones. So I'm going to try and keep that idea going here, so it hopefully brings some dimension out. Problem is, I've added so much shadow here now that I'm not going to necessarily be able to see it myself. I've talked about this before, my difficulty in seeing the illusions that I create at times. To me, it's sort of like, rather than the illusion, I'm working with where I'd want to put shadows and highlights to create that illusion, and then it's the mechanics of it more than anything else. How does that work? Oh, excuse me. Yeah, that works, doesn't it? I think. Now the tree trunk, a shadow at the bottom, and then at the sides I'm going to try and preserve a highlight in the middle, even at the top. And I'm putting this in even though if I use colour, I'm likely to go with a dark brown, a darkish brown, actually a reddish brown, because that's my favourite kind. I'm not keen on the cooler browns, and it's up to me what I use. This isn't meant to be representational of anything, so I could use any colours. I'm quite fond of pink trees, actually. Pink and purple, because they don't exist unless they're covered in blossom. So there's that one, and I am going to just clean the centre of this up again to bring it back into highlight. Have a look at some of these areas. Just take some of that graphite out. And that just brings that there. Okay. Again, this one, I'm going to put some shadow on this side and this side. Here, 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 and here. There, 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 a little bit there and a little bit there. And then I'm also going to put some highlight just under these again, because they do look that way. It looks like, it makes sense if it's going to be a tree, that, as I've already said, the upper areas would overlap the lower ones. So you'd want shadow underneath those. So that would work. I'm going to leave the tree trunk blank because I think there are other ways of adding shadow and highlight there than trying to get some graphite into a really small space. This is bugging me because the end's really soft now, I'm afraid. It was to begin with, it, you know, brand new it was. So they have a different feel than a tortillon. But they work in the same way. And often the names are used interchangeably for them by people, it seems. They all work. So that helps with that one and that illusion. Okay, this one, the same kind of thing. But I think with this one, I'm just going to put shadows here, because the other areas are so tiny. We'll see how it goes with these just here. So what I can do is just spread that out a little bit up underneath, just to give that subtle hint of shadow underneath. Keep it close to the bark, down the edge, and then just under that line. Just add a bit there, just using what's on the paper stamp. Tortillon. So it's a bit more of a subtle shadow than on the others, but we'll have a look and see how that compares. I do need to put a bit of shadow on my bits at the top. Okay, so yeah, a bit less stark. Okay, next job. I've got my 2B here, which is harder, so I can get a finer line, and also it shouldn't spread as easily. I say that, it may very well do. And again here, I'm going to put shadow on either side of these vertical lines to begin with, as if we've got them dipping and curling away. So let me get my, I have that here somewhere. I'll show you this, it's well used this, but hopefully I'll be able to get these fluffy bits off. The sandpaper looks like it's getting clogged up, but it's not. All this dust though is a pain in the posterior, and that's why I've got some masking tape on the top, because I use the masking tape to just clean it up for me. And so those are pretty much clean, but it's not so much clean, it's getting rid of that fluff on the end I wanted. Okay, let's have a look and see how this works. Yeah, I haven't got so much of that softness on the edge of this, so it's a bit more manageable. I'm keeping the graphite where I want it. There we go. So that makes it look like it's folding in and out. Let's give some shadows at the bottom, if nothing else, on these, because I can. Oh gosh, excuse me, phone. Okie dokes, pesky phone calls, eh? Well, So there, I can't remember what I was talking about, but there we, oh yeah, it was just little bits of shadow, if nothing else, at the base of these trees, just to add something there. And again, with just what graphite is on the tip of this, I'm just going to add a bit of shadow there. This one is going to be interesting and fun. There will be shadow underneath each of these blobs. So that's the first step. Let's put some shadow under these because they overlap, and this will really help with that sense of being overlapped. I'm also going to put shadow down the side of the trunk because that would also make sense. I missed one there, that's fine. And then the other places where there will be shadow is where these overlap going outwards. So here, 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 and some here, 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 and here. And I think I'm just going to put a little hint of shadow right at the bottom because they would dip down a little bit, and I just think that would help a little, not the ones at the top. So let's have a look and see how this works. Just trying to keep this fairly well contained, but you do need a bit of it spreading out. Less with the ones at the bottom edge, but underneath here, underneath each one, it does need to spread out, but you need to keep it in the same kind of shape as where it bulges out. But I think that will work. Along the edge, it's just very subtle. It's just that hint of darkness that's there. Of course, with these, the bigger you draw these trees, the more opportunities there are to put things in the spaces to add pattern in there. This one is a possibility, but I love it so much as it is. It just makes me smile just as it is, and I'll just add a little bit there. Bit there, that one's, there we go. So do they look all nice and bulgy? The answer is I don't know, because I can't actually see that illusion. Let me have a look, let's try some light on the matter. Got plenty of light. Why is this so dark looking? I don't know, but it's looking okay. Okie dokes. Okay, I'm thinking about colour, so I'm going to go and get some colour. Okie dokes, back again with some colour. This time I've got the Ecoline brush pens, and they've got watercolour ink in them, which is completely transparent, which is fantastic. And I just have here a piece of white plastic. It happens to be a cutting plate for a die cutting machine. And I do rather, it's sturdy, it's washable, and it actually works really nicely just to scribble some of these down on. And surprisingly, a little of these goes quite a bit of a long way. Okay, and a bit more there, because I don't know what that colour is, it's been mixed. And the next one I think is this one I'd like, which is fir green. So I think that's a bluish green, bronze gold, grass green, fir green. And I've got some orange, yellowy browns on the other side, but it's the greens I really want to try. I'm going to go for this. Here I'm using my water brush. Let's get some water flowing, hopefully. And I'm going to add this at the darkest where I want it to be darkest, and hopefully I'll be able to just spread it out into a highlighted area. These are lovely because the only disadvantage of them is that they're not light fast, so they're great for work that's going to be scanned and so on, or something like a greeting card that may not be kept or would be put away in a a cupboard or something, but not to be left out on display in bright sunlight, because sunlight will cause these to fade quite drastically. But the colours are so vibrant, but because they're transparent, they will, and obviously I'm working with water, they're going to pick up some of that distress ink background. But they're so vibrant that you only need a tiny amount of colour. A little goes a long way with them, which is why I'm not using the brush markers directly on the paper, because A, it's not watercolour paper, so they will just sink in and won't move again. And B, the areas are relatively small. So the brushes are really juicy. They're really, really fab. I've seen them often, and I thought, oh, I didn't really need those. But they have so much more juice in them, I suppose, than Tombows or the Kuretake Zig real brush clean colour pens, which is a heck of a mouthful to say. Colours are lovely, and there's a lot more colours than in the Ecoline range, but you can mix colours. So this is, this is a lovely evergreeny type of green. Yeah, it is. So let's see, so this will give the difference that colour makes. And bear in mind, these areas are actually a lot bigger than I would normally draw. And I am putting the colour down before I decide if I want to add any more detail pattern inside these. So it's possible. So I can work on the top of this. And even though the colour's faded towards the edge here, that shading I put in with the graphite pen will serve to darken what little colour there is there. I'm not being too fussy about getting a perfect gradient today, it's sketchbook. But if I want to go back and add a teeny bit more colour where I'm lacking colour, such as underneath and so on, it's easy enough to do. Where I've missed places, because this brush is misbehaving today. It is actually, quite badly. The other day it was dribbling out too much water. Today it's decided it doesn't want to give me enough. Even though I've squeezed just about the living daylights out of it. Typical, isn't it? I'm reaching over for my scrappy bit of, there it is, kitchen towel. Maybe because I need to refill this a bit. There we are. So that starts to bring it to life, doesn't it? It does. There we go, that's refocused. All right, for the stem, I have got some colours out, but let me have a look. Oh, I have got mahogany here, which is a lovely red-brown colour, which you'll see me use because I haven't put it next to the greens on this palette, because these will always reactivate with water. I tend to put colours in colour families close by each other, or vaguely that way. Again, I'm going to use quite a lot of colour along the edges, and then I'm going to use what there is on my brush to just swipe across to the centre. It's a bit backwards to, in some ways, to working with watercolour pencils, which is where I always start with the edge of the watercolour pencil and pull out the colour slightly first and then push the colour back here it is putting the colour down and thickest where you want the darkest shadows, and then moving it to where it blends out so you're left with that highlight. I've got quite a bit of a highlight there. I am going to add some of this one. I'm not sure what colour this is, but it's an ochre of one kind or another, I think. So just for a bit of variation and brightness. There we go. It's a bit bright yellow down the middle. Perhaps a bit too bright. So there's that one. The other side would be the same. This one, let me try. Put this one here. Take some of that and mix that with my green gold. So I've got a more bluey, yellowy green, a different colour of green, and I'm just trying to get some of the colour off my brush before I start adding it to this. Because what I can do is just do the whole of the section. I fussed around with the other one, but I really don't need to fuss around with the small one too much. Take the rest of the colour off and then just spread this out. This is really quite a bright green, but it is lovely. Well, I like it. Difference in green. I'm not a great colour mixer. I try to understand colour theory. I've got the basics, but the rest of it I just go, oh. I'd prefer to use one colour and shadow and highlight like I'm doing here, I think. Now, I haven't left that highlight where I would like it, so I'm just going to use water to dampen that area I want to be light, and then my scuzzy piece of kitchen paper. And I've got some streaks in here, but that's okay. I can live with streaks. Adds interest and texture. So let me add a bit more of this green blue here, and then do the other side so you can see the, oh gosh, that really is beautifully dark now. Just an extra bit of blue and suddenly you've got a whole different colour. If you've only got a limited number of colours, it's a really good idea to spend some time sort of like swatching, not swatching the pure colours, but actually doing mixes of them in a grid. I can, if you want me to show you that, although there are plenty of other people who do it, so you can see what colours you can create from the limited number you've got, then let me know and I'll do one with you, because I'm not brilliant at mixing colours, but it's nice to know that if what kind of colour I will get if I mix this one and this one. So this was a blue. I'm not sure what blue it was. I think it is that it's a turquoise blue. It's turquoise. Let me just check. Turquoise green, yeah, with bronze green, and I get that. I get both of those colours depending on how much of the blue and how much of the green. So again, it comes down to how much of each you put in, and it's working with them. This one here, I'm going to use grass green. I'm not worried if I colour the trunk in on these, because I can always go back and use brown. And again, I'm not worried too much if I don't get that highlight in, because as these are water reactive, it's easy enough for me to put some water in, hopefully press water, and to either let the water push the colour to one side, which it would do better on watercolour paper. I use a kitchen towel just to mop some of that up. And again, I'm going to add a little bit of blue to this grass green, and you can see the difference that it makes again. And that was turquoise rather than any other kind of shades of blue. and it was only tiny, it was just one quick swipe the tip of the brush across a small area of the turquoise blue into the small petal of grass green. But it gives a less green, a less yellowy green and a more vibrant green. Isn't that fun? Okay, let's try this. This I think is Prussian blue, because that's one of the blues that I work with a lot. I like it. Indigo I really like. Okay, so for this one, the dark areas are going to be where these meet. So let's pop the dark areas in where I want that appearance of shadow. And then hopefully this will behave and I can get the highlights in. Bearing in mind, I'm also aware that I can always add highlights in a different way with chalk or white pen or pencil. Charcoal is what I meant, not chalk. You could use chalk though. When I was doing A level, I did chalk drawings, or charcoal and chalk, and the chalk used was blackboard chalk, or chalkboard chalk. And it worked wonderfully for highlights and things because it is so opaque. Right, I've run out of that colour, so let's see what we can do. The other side will be a different colour entirely, and a colour I'll never be able to replicate again unless it actually ends up dominated by one of the greens. It's not that dissimilar really. Little hints of that will probably bring it back to that darker shade. And I am trying to get a darker colour where it would be, so that then I can do the old lift a maroon thing out. So let's just put some water down in the middle, work it back and forth, and while it's still wet, paper towel and lift it up. There we are. That worked. That worked really nicely actually. It's quite a yellow colour left there. Okay, this lovely big one, I think it's going to need a different colour. So you can hear me furtling around because I've got all of my brush pens in a tin. I actually store them on their side, so I have to rootle around to find the cut, to get the colour out. So I'm not making any apologies for that rattling noise. See, I'm being mindful of where I would have. So the highlight would be around this area or even a bit higher up, and I'm just pushing the colour back, not black. So the darkest colour I'm applying where the shadows are, and then I'm going to use the brush to pull some of that colour out, but also to fade it around to create a highlight, and I can push some of the colour back to the darker areas. And again, that highlights can be intensified later on. I'm very cautious using colours, and trying to get these highlights and shadows. Part of me thinks, well, you should put the lighter colour down and then drop the... Try that actually. Let's try that on a different one. Let's just try putting in quite a light wash. That's not really that light. Let's try it and just take it down into this one. So I've basically put just a light layer of colour on here, and try on some of the others. And the shadow from the pencil shows through, so you can see there's shadow there. But I want a bit more colour as well. I don't just want this. So while it's still damp, not sopping wet, but I can go back, add the darker colour, and I think this Imagine paper, this is mixed media paper from Canson, I think it'll work okay with this, perhaps. So while you just keep adding until you get the intensity of colour you want. So it's working wet in wet. Well, wet in damp in my case. The others may have dried off too much. Yeah, they have dried off just a tad, but it's okay because you can just add some more water and work it again. And here I've got a line forming where I want the highlight really. That's okay because I'll just use more water and wet it and see what it will do. So this is a different way of getting those intense shadows. I'm not an expert on this. I don't pretend to be. I love watercolour. I love the idea of using watercolours, but boy do I struggle with them. And it doesn't matter what paper I use. Often I get better results with non-watercolour paper, which is probably a clue that I'm trying to work with them in a way that perhaps they're not designed to be worked, but it's finding how they work for me. And I think that's the same can be said of all of us, is that media work, sort of like they're designed to be working a certain way. But if that doesn't work for you and you find a different way to work with them, brilliant. You get results that you're happy with, you enjoy the process. I don't see a problem with it. But I'm sure there are tips and tricks that if you are trying to work in a particular way, particular style of watercolour or particular effect you want to get, then there may be better ways of doing it than you're trying, put it that way. Core blimey, they look really bulbous and they look very vibrant on the screen. But yeah, that works better, doesn't it? And it is just working quickly so that the paper remains wet after you've added that base coat, that lightest one, and then you add in the rest, the darker areas, fairly quickly while it's still wet or damp. Judging how wet the paper is and the effect you want, or how wet the paper needs to be for the effect that you want, is key to this, and you only learn that by experience. I wouldn't pretend to be experienced at all. In fact, I wouldn't even pretend to be an expert on this. But I do get some sense, some idea. I'm going to add just a touch of Prussian blue in there. And I might actually do that to some of the others because that blue will help to darken these shadows, because it's quite a dark blue. Indigo will be better, but I'm not going to irritate you with the noise of me trying to get a colour out. So adding a darker colour over the top will also work, and it adds interest as well to colours that are there. And with these, they will always, well, mostly will reactivate with water. So there we are, some trees. Oh, look at this. This is the mahogany colour that I used. The red colour. Look what colour it dries to. It dries to a mucky brown. But as soon as you activate it with water and add it to paper, suddenly we get this glorious colour back again. And let me have a look. I think we'll use some of this. This is bright orange. So I'm going to use that for a different colour pattern. Actually, that's a nicer tone than what I put in here. So let's have a look. Again, you can just play with these until you're happy with what you want. If you're not going for a, you discover things by playing, I think. I've actually got a book. I can't remember the name of it, but it is on my Kindle. And I will try to remember to look it up and put it in the descriptions. If I don't, somebody will tell me or remind me, I'm sure, in comments. So my ability to remember things is not brilliant. But it's about playing with watercolour just for fun, just for relaxation, and just seeing what happens in creating, you know, the magic of watercolour, because watercolour is quite a magical medium, the way that it works. And if you drop one colour into another or different medium into it, the effects you get can be controlled, but they also can be uncontrollable. And that lack of control is something that can be very therapeutic and something to learn, especially if you're a perfectionist like me, where I want to control every aspect of my art. I want to be successful with everything I do. That's part of my personality issues. I'm not as bad as I used to be. I can recognise mostly when something is good enough, although I do struggle sometimes. God blimey, they're really bright stems. But it's a lovely book for encouraging you just to play with watercolour and just see what happens, and just use it for relaxation and almost a meditation. So it's not something I've looked at in a while or done, but it's something that I could very much look back at and go, yeah, I'd like to do that. And there are days when that is just what I want to do. And this is a kind of a version of me doing that. It's just with a bit more control. I'm not a control freak. I just want things to work the way I think it should work, rather than going, right, okay, that's how it's worked here. And that really is how it's worked here. So there we are. So I said yesterday that I was going to have a look at those leaf shapes I used in the colouring page I did and see what happens. And that is exactly what I've done here today. I have got other examples. My mind is ticking over what other patterns I could use to create this. I don't know what my favourite one is. I love this one because it is so, it's not trying to, it's a fir tree almost, but without trying to be one, if that makes any sense. These are more sort of like, yeah, they look a lot like Christmas trees. This one is quite fun because you've got that different, it's more wavy, it's more like a fluted paper cone, and with this one you could almost lose that middle stem. I put it in because I'm working this out. I'm trying to work out how I'd like to do these. I quite like the trunk on view here because it adds that texture and that flash of colour through it. But in reality, it will most probably be a good idea not to have that there, just a line that everything grows off. I don't know. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's given you some things to think about. You don't need to go out and buy any materials that I use. Whatever you've got is fine. Whatever media you like is fine. I just wanted to use the Ecolines today, watercolour inks. I love them. And, I think they will be my watercolour medium of choice forever. Unless I try the P.H. Martin's ones, sometimes Dr. P.H. Martin's, I think. But I'm unlikely to, given that I like the Ecoline. They've got a lot fewer colours as well, which means I'm not overwhelmed. Well, I am. There's 60, I think, ish. And I'm still overwhelmed by colour. But I'll say thank you for joining me. This is a very long video. Very long. So I'm going to say, I hope you enjoy it. Take care of yourselves. And whatever else you do, find time to be creative. Bye-bye. Take care now. Bye-bye.